So here we go. Okay, here's the basic idea. You have this periodic table here. It's blank, and it doesn't need to be labeled. But as you can see, I've already shaded it in. The first two columns are going to represent elements that fill up the S sublevel. Remember, we've said already that the energy levels have different sublevels, and the sublevels have electrons within their orbitals. These first two columns represent the S's. The P's are located over to the right. It's the last 6 columns on the periodic table. I purposefully did not include this box right up here. The element that lives there is what? Helium. Instead, I drew helium over here. Helium does not have any P's. It does not have the P sublevel. Okay? So we're going to have to pretend like it lives over here in what I labeled as the S2 column. The D elements are right here. It's the low-lying section. You may know of them as the transition elements or the transition metals from middle school. All of those are D's, and then these bottom 2 rows, or the bottom 2 periods, are the F's. If you look at it a little bit more, you see I labeled them. If you have an element like hydrogen that sits right here in the first column, all of these in the first column will end in S1. Everything that sits in the second column will end in S2. Okay, I did the same thing with the P's. I just labeled them. If these all represent P's, the first one's P1, second one's P2, and so on and so forth. I did the same thing with the D's. You have D1 through D10. And for the F's, you have F1 through F14. So all of this is okay. I mean, how do I do this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to start filling in electrons. And we're going to write their electron configuration. We talked about in class on, I think it was Tuesday, that we have to put electrons in an atom in such a way that they fill up the lowest energy levels and sublevels first, and then they move on to the higher energy levels and sublevels as they go. Okay? Well, here's what we're going to do. In order to do a configuration, what we're going to always start with is element number 1. Hydrogen is element number 1. If you look at a regular periodic table, you should already know what the atomic number is. Its atomic number is 1. Helium is number 2. I'm going to fill in a couple of these. Lithium sits right here. It's number 3. Then you have beryllium is number 4. Boron is 5. And you could keep going. So if we're going to write the electron configuration for hydrogen, I'm going to start there. Y'all can just watch for a minute. You don't have to do anything. If I do it for hydrogen, the first thing that I'm going to look at is this. This is the row number. You see there's 7 rows. Row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The row number represents the energy level. You can look at the row numbers and know how many energy levels any atom has. So for example, hydrogen has 1 energy level. Lithium has 2. Boron is still in the second row, right? So it also has 2 energy levels. If I come down this way, cesium sits right here. Guess how many energy levels cesium has? 6, because it's in the 6th row. So that's another handy trick of doing this, is that you could tell anybody how many energy levels a particular atom has. Okay, so to do the configuration for hydrogen, I look over here at the energy level, and I write it down first as a large number, like you would write any, like the size of a capital letter. The next thing I do is I look at what I'm filling. I'm filling up the S's because I'm in the S, what's called the S block. I'm in the 2 columns of the S's. So I write down 1s. That means its electrons to begin with will go into the first energy level, the S sublevel. Now, how I come up with how many electrons is I look at the column. If it's in the first column, I'm going to write S1. So I put a superscript 1. It's very important to me that this be, the first one right here be a large number, a lowercase letter, and a superscript number. I just did hydrogen's electron configuration. What that means is it has one electron in the s sublevel of the first energy level. The looks on your faces speaks volumes. We're just going to keep doing, we're going to do a couple of them in a row and see if it kind of starts to click with what we're doing. Okay, I'm going to do heliums next. I'm always going to start with element 1. Helium is element number 2. I'm going to start with hydrogen. I look at what row it's in. It's in row 1. I write down the 1. Then I'm going to write the sublevel that it's in. It's in the S block. It's sitting over here, so I write 1s. Then I look at which column it's in. It's not sitting in the first column. It's sitting in the second column. I basically write the highest number of that block that I get to, and in this case it's 2, so I write 1s2. Well, that means helium has 2 electrons in the s sublevel, hold that thought, of the first energy level. Okay, and if you think about what you know, does hydrogen really have 1 electron? You sure know how to find the numbers of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Based on the atomic number, it's got 1, right? This matches up with that. Does helium have 2? Yeah, because its atomic number is 2. Okay, let's move on to lithium. Okay, if we do lithium, then what we're going to do next is we're going to start where? Which element? Versata, your paper is already at the back. Okay, you got to know. Where do I start, y'all? Thank you. I always start where? I always start at number 1. I mean, it's an easy place to start. I start at number 1. What row am I in for number 1? I'm in row 1. I know that lithium is not in row 1. It doesn't matter. I start with hydrogen. So I write 1. In order to get to element number 3, I need to write down all of the stuff that I go through to get there. So I've got to go through row 1, and I've got to go through the S's, so I write down 1s. Again, I told you to do the highest S that you go through. I go through 2 of them, right? So 2 is the highest number, so I'll write down the superscript 2. This is element 2. We follow the atomic numbers. After 2, well, we said it would do it again. It did. Okay. So, let's try this again. After we go through the first 2, we have to go to element number 3, right? All right, what row am I in now? 2. So, I write a large number 2 to represent the fact that I'm in the second energy level or the second row of the periodic table. Okay? I'm still in the S's, so I write down an S next. And if I'm doing lithium, this first one, the furthest that I make it is column 1. So S1, I write down S1. That means lithium's electron configuration is 1s2, 2s1. That's how you would read that. Well, it does make sense if you know what the letters and the numbers stand for. What that means is that lithium has 2 electrons in the S sublevel of the first energy level, and it's got 1 electron in the S sublevel of the second energy level.
So 2 plus 1 is 3 and it's lithium. Cool. Right?
Well, if I add up these, you're saying if 2 plus 1, if I add up 2 plus 1, that does equal 3. How many electrons should lithium have? 3, because it has an atomic number of 3. Okay, well, since your mouth is still hanging open, okay, think about this. Here's my badly drawn apartment building. Remember this? Yeah. Okay, what that means is this is very badly drawn, but what that means is on the first floor of my apartment, in the S apartment, there's 2 electrons living there. What this is telling me is on the second floor of my apartment, remember we had the S the second floor had an S apartment and a P apartment? You remember drawing this the other day? Yes. What this means is that I have 2 electrons living in the S, and I've got 1 electron living in the P. Is Austin dying?
Yes.
Okay. Well, look, I'm trying the best I can to kind of make this make sense to you. Okay? This is telling me how that apartment building that is the energy levels is filled up. Is that any better, Josh?
No, we continue.
Glad I could help, dude. Let me ask you this. At this point, if you're confused about anything in particular, like if you're sitting there thinking, okay, I mean, I got the idea of the apartment and that it's divided, but like I don't understand what all these letters and numbers mean. Or, I mean, if you don't understand how I'm coming up with them, if there's a particular point of confusion, if you can point me to that, it would help.
I got confused after you left the first.
At what?
After you left the first two.
After I left here and went to this one? Okay. Well, let's backtrack then. All right. So you were with me when how I came up with 1s2?
Yep.
Okay. So then, well, this is helpful then if you're telling me where. Okay, the key is you follow the atomic numbers. Okay? So if this is number 1 and this is number 2, my next step will be to find element number 3. Okay, element number 3 is lithium. And then I'm going to repeat the process. I'm going to write the row that I'm in. That's what I did up here. That's how I got the 1. The 1 represents row 1. The S came from which block it was in. So I'm going to repeat that process. I'm now in row 2, right? So I write 2 instead. And I'm still in the S block, so I write S. A little bit better? Okay. How I come up with this superscript number is based on which of the columns I'm in. If I'm in the first column, I write a superscript 1. If I'm in the second column, I write a superscript 2. Which one am I in if I'm right here at lithium where my pen's at? 1. So I write 2s1. Slightly better? The little 2? Okay. He's asking where I got the little 2. The little 2 came from the fact that I went through S1 and S2. I write the highest one that I went through. I am not going to do this. I am not going to write 1S1, 1S2. I'm not going to write down a letter and a number for every single box I go through.
So the highest number, the last highest.
The superscript will be the highest one I went through of that. So I just did 2 because I went through both of them. Okay. We're working on this. It will as I keep going, I think. Okay. You're one lunch away from a break. Let's do another one. Here's what I may do. Let me pause this and chunk the videos slightly smaller